A police officer and his loyal K-9 partner mysteriously vanish during a routine search. For months, unanswered questions haunt the community, until a startling image emerges from a wildlife thermal camera deep in the forest. What they discover sets off a chilling investigation, unearthing secrets darker than anyone imagined. What happened to Officer John Duncan, and why was his faithful companion found alone, months later, tied to a tree? Morgantown woke softly beneath a pale November sky, the first hesitant beams of dawn brushing gently over streets covered in fallen leaves, damp and glistening from last night's rain. Autumn had always suited the small West Virginia city, weaving its quiet charm into the fabric of daily life. The hills surrounding the town stood shrouded in a misty embrace, like guardians keeping secrets whispered only among ancient trees. On mornings like these, Morgantown felt untouched by time, suspended between nostalgia and something else, a quiet, subtle tension lurking beneath its serene surface. The streets, lined with modest brick buildings and small cafes, gradually came alive with the soft murmurs of shopkeepers setting up their stores, the distant sounds of cars gently gliding along rain-slicked pavement, and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee that lingered in the crisp air. It was into this delicate rhythm that John Duncan awoke every morning. At 34 years old, John was the embodiment of quiet strength, tall and lean, with eyes deep as the rivers that crisscrossed the region. Yet behind those calm blue eyes lay unspoken stories, fragments of loss and memories of a past that he carried silently, hidden beneath his composed exterior. His uniform, meticulously pressed each morning, represented more than authority. It was his armor, guarding against the uncertainties of life. John's home was modest, tucked on a quiet street shaded by towering maples, whose branches seemed to whisper secrets into the early morning breeze. Each day began the same way, the first sip of bitter coffee, the familiar scent mingling with memories that drifted softly back, reminders of a life that had been and the emptiness left behind. But amid the quiet solitude of John's mornings, one presence always stood steadfastly beside him. Max, his German Shepherd canine partner, was more than just a loyal companion. He was John's anchor, a living thread woven through the lonely tapestry of his life. The dog's amber eyes radiated an intelligence and compassion that seemed almost human, understanding John's silences better than words ever could. They shared breakfast quietly, Max's attentive gaze following every movement John made. Together they formed an inseparable bond, a brotherhood born from shared experiences, trust, and silent understanding. Occasionally, John's mind drifted into memories, often unwillingly, images of a smiling face lost years ago, laughter echoing faintly, and the cold, haunting emptiness that followed. Max always sensed these moments, nudging gently against John's leg, pulling him softly back from the abyss of sorrow. No words were needed. The simple presence of the dog was enough. That particular morning held a different air, one of quiet, unease that John couldn't quite place. The usual comfort of their routine felt overshadowed by something intangible. His radio crackled suddenly to life, the sound harsh and disruptive against the soft murmurs of his morning. "Officer Duncan, we've got a situation near Cheat Lake. Teenager reported missing last night. Need you and Max out there immediately." John paused, his coffee half raised, the steam swirling slowly upward, dissolving into the stillness. Cheat Lake was beautiful but deceptive, its calm waters reflecting the surrounding forest in perfect stillness, a mirror hiding dark secrets beneath. Reports of people wandering too deep into the woods were not unusual, but this felt different, ominous, somehow heavier. In moments, John and Max were on their way, driving through streets still sleeping, the world bathed in the soft gray of early morning. Max sat alert, ears perked forward, sensing the urgency radiating from John. As they approached Cheat Lake, the landscape grew increasingly wild, trees thickening, branches twisting overhead like skeletal fingers reaching out. Leaves fluttered down gently, landing softly on the windshield as if trying to warn them. whispering silently of caution and impending shadows. Upon arrival, the search team was already gathering, their worried voices low but strained. John approached, his presence immediately calming, authoritative yet compassionate. As details emerged, the girl, 17, named Emily, vanished sometime after dusk. John felt the weight of urgency grow heavier on his chest. He knelt briefly beside Max, meeting the dog's steady gaze. "All right, buddy, we're counting on you," John whispered softly, scratching gently behind Max's ears. The dog responded with a focused stare, ready, waiting. Together, they stepped into the woods. Instantly, the world seemed to close around them, silence descending like a velvet curtain, muffling sounds from outside. The forest was thick with shadow, the faint smell of damp earth and decay filling John's senses. Max moved confidently, head low, sniffing intently, senses alert to every detail. Hours passed slowly as they searched deeper into the heart of the forest. The radio crackled occasionally, updates growing more fragmented, distorted. John's pulse quickened subtly, instincts sharpening, aware of something wrong but unable to pinpoint what exactly. The oppressive quiet pressed against him, suffocating, almost tangible. Shadows moved at the edge of his vision, dancing between trees, illusions conjured by anxiety and exhaustion. Then Max stopped abruptly, ears flat, growling lowly, a sound rarely heard. John's heart skipped, adrenaline flooding his veins. "Is it, boy?" he whispered, scanning the surrounding darkness. He could see nothing, but the sensation of being watched prickled uncomfortably at the back of his neck. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for his radio, voice calm but urgent, attempting contact. "Dispatch, this is Duncan. We might have something. Here, deep northwest sector. Stand by. Static." No response. "Dispatch, do you copy?" He tried again, voice tightening. Only the haunting hiss of static returned. Max growled louder, hackles raised, body tense. John's pulse thundered, senses heightened, every sound amplified. The trees seemed closer now, leaning inward, blocking escape, pressing tighter. Panic surged briefly, swiftly controlled. "Stay close, Max," John breathed, stepping carefully forward. The radio hissed again, louder this time. Distorted whispers breaking through the static fragments, unintelligible but somehow menacing. "Dispatch, urgent. We're not alone, repeat. We're not alone out here." John's voice sharpened, urgent. The whispers grew louder, distorted by static. Incomprehensible yet chillingly human. He moved instinctively closer to Max, feeling the dog's reassuring presence against his leg. The world tightened further, darkness thickening, reality slipping at the edges. His breath came in shallow gasps now, heart hammering painfully in his chest. "Dispatch," John's voice cracked, desperation slipping through his carefully controlled tone. Static roared suddenly, drowning everything, filling his ears with chaos and noise, overwhelming, terrifying. A burst of frantic whispers cut sharply through, chillingly clear for one fleeting instant. "You shouldn't have come." The radio fell silent, completely silent. John's heart froze, icy dread crawling through every nerve ending. "Max." His voice trembled, barely audible. He looked down, the dog staring back with wide, anxious eyes. As if sensing exactly what John felt, a snap echoed sharply behind them. Both turned simultaneously, eyes straining through darkness now impenetrable. Nothing. Silence returned thicker, heavier. Slowly, hesitantly, John raised the radio one last time, fingers shaking slightly. "Dispatch, respond immediately." "Officer." Duncan requesting immediate assistance, but this time, even static abandoned him, leaving only cold, hollow silence echoing between trees that seemed to mock his desperation, and in that suffocating silence, John knew something was profoundly, terribly wrong. Word spread quickly through narrow streets, whispered between neighbors, carried in worried glances exchanged at the corner cafe. Officer John Duncan and his faithful canine partner, Max, were missing in the dense forests near Cheat Lake, overnight. The heartbeat of the quiet town quickened, transformed by fear into something restless, uncertain, and deeply unsettling. Within hours, Cheat Lake was surrounded by flashing lights and tense voices. Police officers and volunteers streamed into the woodland, each face etched with worry, each voice heavy with the hope of swift resolution. The forest, once a place of calm, reflective solitude, now loomed over the searchers, its shadows heavy, whispering an eerie silence punctuated only by distant shouts and frantic movements through tangled underbrush. Detective Elena Hargrave stood quietly at the perimeter, observing the organized chaos with steady, calculating eyes. Elena was known throughout Morgantown for her unwavering determination and sharp intellect. Yet beneath the composed surface lay emotional scars that informed every careful move she made. Dark-haired and intense, her presence commanded respect, often intimidating those unfamiliar with her. At her side, as always, was her assistant Mark Jensen, youthful and irreverent, whose quick smile and easy humor provided a delicate balance to Elena's fierce seriousness. "Looks like the entire town turned out," Mark remarked lightly, attempting to break the heavy silence that lingered between them. Elena didn't turn her gaze, eyes still fixed on the woods. "John meant something to these people, Mark. They won't rest until he's found." Mark nodded, his usual playful demeanor softened by the gravity of the moment. "Well, he's got the best looking for him." Elena allowed herself a faint, fleeting smile. Their partnership thrived on this delicate interplay between humor and seriousness, each recognizing precisely when the other needed relief from the relentless weight of their work. As the search unfolded, hours stretched painfully into days. Volunteers and professionals combed the woods tirelessly, following leads that dissolved frustratingly into false trails and misleading signs. Every snapped branch or disturbed patch of earth raised hopes only to dash them moments later, leaving the searchers drained and despairing. With each passing day, Elena's frustration grew, mirrored by Mark's quiet anxiety. On the third day, a group of searchers near the lake's edge found the first troubling clue: an ominous fragment of fabric caught among low branches near the muddy shoreline. Elena, heart racing, carefully examined it, recognizing immediately the torn edge of a police uniform. Her fingers brushed softly against the fabric, heart sinking as the undeniable implications settled heavily over her. Mark's voice was barely audible, echoing her fears. "Is it John's?" "Looks like it," Elena answered, voice tight, betraying nothing of the turmoil within. Her eyes scanned the surrounding ground, noting faint, confused footprints scattered unevenly around the mud, heading erratically toward the forest interior. Nothing made sense. The tracks were chaotic, suggesting panic or struggle. News of this discovery rippled outward swiftly, deepening Morgantown's collective anxiety. At local diners, conversations grew hushed, worried glances exchanged as residents grappled with uncertainty and fear. Children were kept closer, doors locked tighter, and the town's gentle rhythm faltered, stumbling beneath the weight of unanswered questions. Meanwhile, Elena and Mark's investigation deepened, every clue scrutinized meticulously. Their interactions revealed more about their contrasting natures. Elena's methodical and reserved approach often clashed humorously with Mark's spontaneous instincts. Yet together, their methods harmonized into an effective partnership. Late evenings found them poring over maps and evidence, exhaustion etched clearly on both their faces, offset by Mark's well-timed quips that often coaxed brief laughter from Elena. Their bond deepened during these relentless nights, forged by mutual respect, quiet jokes, and shared determination. Weeks passed, and Morgantown slowly adapted to the unresolved mystery lingering at its heart, carrying on with cautious normalcy. But beneath everyday smiles, eyes betrayed lingering doubts and fears. Friends and family gathered in candlelit vigils, their quiet prayers mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves and whispers of comfort, clinging desperately to hope. As autumn gave way slowly to a bitter winter, the case grew colder, frustrating Elena deeply. She carried the burden of unanswered questions visibly, her intense eyes shadowed by fatigue and an unspoken sense of personal failure. Mark maintained his role as emotional counterweight, quietly reminding her they had done everything humanly possible, even as his own fears lingered beneath casual jokes. One frozen February evening, as snow softly blanketed Morgantown, Alina sat alone at the precinct. Her desk, strewn with papers and faded photographs, seemed a tangible representation of the unanswered chaos in her mind. Mark appeared suddenly at her doorway, coat dusted in snowflakes, a steaming mug of coffee extended toward her with an easy smile. "Thought you might need something stronger, but coffee will do for now," he joked gently. Alina took the mug gratefully, sipping slowly, warmth spreading pleasantly through her tired bones. "Why are you still here, Jensen? Shouldn't you be out enjoying your youth?" Mark shrugged, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Figured you might need someone to lighten the mood around here. Besides, who else is going to remind you to sleep occasionally?" Elena's soft laugh was brief but genuine, gratitude flickering quietly in her eyes. Their shared silence was comfortable, a testament to the bond they'd forged through the difficult months. Just as she prepared to send Mark home for the evening, her phone rang sharply, jarring them both. She lifted the receiver cautiously, instinctively. Sensing urgency in the call, Detective Hargrave, she answered sharply. The voice on the other end, frantic yet controlled, spoke rapidly. Elena's eyes widened slightly as she listened, heart quickening with each hurried word. "Yes, I understand," she replied tersely, scribbling notes rapidly. Mark watched intently, his expression shifting slowly from curiosity to deep concern. As Elena placed the phone back in its cradle, silence filled the room, thick and tense. "What is it?" Mark asked softly, apprehensive. Elena turned slowly, eyes reflecting a mix of relief, dread, and determination. Something unusual was just found, she began carefully, words measured, carrying an undercurrent of urgency. "Something captured out there, near Cheat Lake, something that might finally give us answers." Her voice trailed off quietly into the tense air between them, leaving unspoken the fears both had quietly carried, and the hope that perhaps, after months of frustrating silence, they were finally on the brink of discovering what truly happened to John Duncan and his loyal companion, Max. The image flickered onto the screen, casting an eerie red glow that seeped into every corner of the dimly lit room. Elena's heart tightened as her eyes adjusted, fixating on the strange sight before her. Max, John's beloved German shepherd, stood utterly still, a stark, ghostly figure in shades of scarlet and orange, captured clearly through the thermal lens. His body pressed tightly against the tree to which he was tied, the rope visible as a sharp line constricting around his torso, pulsing with a sinister brightness. The rest of the frame was fragmented, disjointed clips interrupting the continuous feed, leaving only brief moments visible before abruptly dissolving into static. The room around Elena grew silent, a heavy blanket of disbelief settling over every face gathered to witness this disturbing revelation. Mark stood frozen beside her, his normally casual demeanor replaced with palpable tension. No words passed between them, none were needed. They both understood the gravity of this discovery. Hours later, guided only by the faint outline of landmarks identified from the fractured footage, Elena led a small team through the dense woods toward the precise spot. The forest loomed overhead, its heavy silence broken by hurried breaths and the crackle of radios as they navigated deeper into the unknown. The trees themselves felt different now, their branches twisted, ominous witnesses. Tao's secrets yet uncovered. When they finally reached the tree, Max was there, exactly as the images had depicted him. He was thinner, his once majestic coat dirty and matted, eyes dull yet instantly brightening as Elena approached cautiously. A low whimper escaped his throat, conveying both exhaustion and desperate relief. Elena knelt slowly, her movements gentle and deliberate, carefully cutting the ropes that held him captive. Freed, Max immediately collapsed into her arms, trembling uncontrollably. Tears stung Elena's eyes, her carefully guarded emotions betraying her in this raw moment. The team around them watched silently. The rescue becoming more than just a procedural recovery, it became an emotional catharsis, a fragile beacon of hope amidst a fog of lingering questions. Back in town, news spread like wildfire. Morgantown erupted in collective emotion, a mixture of relief, fear, and intensified curiosity. The community now grappled with even deeper confusion. Max was safe, but where was John? This question lingered uncomfortably in every whispered conversation. Every uneasy glance exchanged across counters at local diners and stores. As Max recovered under veterinary care, Elena found herself wrestling with a growing sense of unease. Fragments of footage haunted her mind, the distorted, deliberately cut scenes implying someone had meticulously edited the recordings, concealing critical evidence. Who had done this, and why? Her uncertainty deepened when the first anonymous letter arrived at the precinct. It was addressed simply, without flourish, the handwriting jagged and hurried. You think you know him. But John Duncan hides more than you can imagine. Look deeper. The truth lies in the shadows he left behind. This cryptic message stirred whispers among the officers. Mark read the letter over Elena's shoulder, eyebrows knitted in concerned tension, radiating from his usually relaxed posture. This can't be real, right? He asked quietly, eyes seeking reassurance Elena couldn't provide. I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But someone wants us to believe there's more to John than we ever knew. As days passed, more letters appeared, each increasingly specific, each implicating not just John but unnamed figures within the Morgantown Police Department. Elena began to sense growing tension among her colleagues. Conversations halted abruptly as she entered rooms, guarded glances exchanged covertly, suspicion poisoning camaraderie. Doubts crept into her thoughts. Could those closest to John truly be hiding secrets so dangerous they'd silence one of their own? Determined, Elena and Mark dug deeper, quietly exploring John's personal life, retracing his steps through the weeks before his disappearance. They uncovered subtle irregularities, hushed arguments, and frequent late-night meetings whose purpose remained unclear. John had always been intensely private, but now it seemed as if he'd built deliberate barriers to shield something deeply troubling. One evening, poring over files and notes late into the night, Elena felt compelled to revisit old photographs John had left behind. His distant smile in each frame seemed tinged with quiet melancholy, a reserved sadness she'd overlooked before. Hidden in plain sight, John's loneliness now spoke volumes, hinting at unresolved turmoil beneath his outward calm. As pressure mounted from the public, Morgantown became a town divided. Trust evaporated like morning fog, replaced by whispered accusations and mounting frustration. The once peaceful streets now held palpable tension. Familiar faces appeared suspicious, strangers openly stared. Elena felt the community's anxiety acutely, a heavy burden resting squarely on her shoulders. She was the town's hope, the one expected to unravel truth from chaos. In parallel, Max's health steadily improved, though his demeanor remained subdued. His eyes always scanning faces anxiously, as though searching endlessly for John. Elena spent quiet moments with the dog, feeling a connection through shared loss and unanswered questions. Together, they became symbols of Morgantown's longing for resolution. Weeks passed in a blur of false leads and dashed hopes until one cold afternoon, Elena received a final, startling letter. It contained coordinates and a single cryptic line: "Find the place he went to hide. There you'll uncover what John truly feared." That evening, driven by instinct more than logic, Elena and Mark ventured deep into the woods once more. The sky darkened rapidly, clouds thickening with the threat of snow, the cold biting deeply into their skin. The forest around them felt alive, watchful, guarding secrets fiercely. After hours of trudging through undergrowth, the coordinates finally led them to a dense thicket almost impenetrable by sight. Elena hesitated only briefly before stepping forward, feeling branches tugging insistently at her jacket as though resisting intrusion. Mark followed close behind, breathing unevenly, the strain evident in his tense silence. Then, suddenly, the Vaun, the Jinn. Dense vegetation parted, revealing a small clearing hidden entirely from view. At its center stood an old, weathered cabin, half hidden beneath creeping vines. Its windows shattered, the door hanging ajar as if inviting discovery. Elena's heart raced, the air around them thickening with anticipation and dread. Stepping carefully closer, her flashlight beam traced over the interior walls, revealing a scene both haunting and profoundly personal. Photographs of John lined the dusty shelves. Familiar objects scattered across broken furniture, his badge, tarnished and abandoned, personal letters, faded by exposure. This was clearly John's sanctuary, a refuge he'd kept deliberately hidden. Even from those closest to him, Elena stood motionless, processing the enormity of what she'd discovered. Mark stood silently beside her, eyes wide, absorbing every detail with mounting disbelief. "What is this place?" he finally whispered, his voice barely audible, weighted by shock. Elena turned slowly, her gaze solemn and focused, recognizing the truth they now confronted. "This," she replied softly, voice trembling slightly under suppressed emotion, "is where John Duncan came to hide from something so dangerous he trusted no one, not even us." As the wind whispered mournfully through the cracks of the old cabin, Elena felt an icy certainty grip her heart. The cabin held secrets, yes, but more than that. It held the key to understanding John's fears, the truths he'd fought so desperately to conceal, truths that someone powerful had been willing to go to great lengths to bury. And standing amid the echoes of John's hidden life, Elena realized their search had only just begun. The old cabin stood hidden among the tangled branches, its timber walls gray and weathered by decades of silent decay. Elena stepped slowly inside, her breath visible in the crisp air, heart pounding with a mix of apprehension and cautious hope. Dust danced quietly through shafts of fading daylight streaming from broken windows, settling gently on surfaces untouched for months, perhaps even years. Mark followed closely, scanning the room with curiosity tempered by wariness. His flashlight swept over cracked furniture and peeling wallpaper, casting elongated shadows that crawled like ghosts across the room. Elena felt an odd stillness envelop her, as if she'd stepped not just into John's secret hideaway, but directly into the hidden recesses of his soul. At first glance, the cabin was chaotic, littered with fragments of John's life left hastily behind. Papers lay scattered over a battered table, handwritten notes mingling with faded photographs. Elena picked one up carefully, recognizing the gentle smile of John and Max, captured in a happier moment. The image tugged painfully at her heart, an aching reminder of simpler times now lost. Mark stepped over piles of clothing, pausing abruptly as something caught his eye. He lifted John's badge, dulled by neglect but unmistakably personal. He studied it solemnly, his usual humor briefly subdued. Elena understood his silence. These abandoned objects were more than just clues. They were pieces of a friend they'd both desperately missed. "Didn't imagine I'd see this badge without John attached," Mark finally murmured, voice softened by the gravity of the moment. Elena nodded slowly, emotions raw, unable to respond. Her eyes drifted towards a small wooden chest half hidden beneath a pile of blankets. Kneeling beside it, she lifted the lid cautiously. Inside lay a collection of worn notebooks and old letters, private journals John had meticulously maintained. Their pages brimmed with his neat, precise handwriting, words carefully chosen as if guarding deeply held secrets. As Elena skimmed through the pages, her heart quickened. Entries hinted at growing concerns about corruption within the Morgantown Police Department, names mentioned subtly, carefully concealed behind initials. Each word deepened the knot of dread tightening inside her chest. Mark's voice broke her concentration, pulling her back to reality. "Elena, come look at this." She moved toward him, noticing an old tape recorder clutched in his hand. Mark pressed play, his face serious, eyes fixed on Elena's reaction as distorted voices filled the air. Double quotes. ... Truth must never come out. A voice hissed urgently, distorted, electronically yet chillingly clear. If Duncan won't let it go, we take desperate measures. We silence him. Elena's breath caught painfully in her throat, icy chills spreading rapidly through her veins. Mark watched her, expression hardened, humor replaced by a protective seriousness he rarely revealed. Desperate measures? Veh. He echoed, disbelief clear in his tone. It explains why John hid himself away, Elena whispered, each word feeling heavier than the last. He knew too much, Mark. Realization seeped into the silence between them, heavy with implications neither wanted to fully acknowledge. Morgantown was a town of trust, safety, community. This recording challenged everything implying danger within the very institution sworn to protect them. Days later, tension filled the precinct. Officers whispered in guarded tones, suspicious eyes darting between colleagues. Elena felt isolation, keenly sensing mistrust from those she'd always counted as allies. She wondered bitterly whom among them had betrayed John, had betrayed them all. That evening, as rain poured relentlessly outside, Elena sat alone, staring at John's notes sprawled across her desk. The burden felt crushing. Memories of her past surfaced painfully, the trauma of losing her younger brother years before. Unresolved guilt clouding every decision she'd made since. She had sworn to protect others, vowing never to feel so powerless again. Yet here she was, caught once more in a web of helplessness and doubt. Mark appeared quietly at her side, setting down 2 mugs of coffee with a familiar, comforting smile. "Careful, detective, you're gonna wrinkle your forehead permanently if you keep frowning like that," he teased gently. Elena smiled faintly, appreciating his attempt to lighten the mood. "I appreciate your concern for my forehead wrinkles, Jensen." Mark laughed softly, leaning back casually against the desk. "Well, someone's got to keep things cheerful around here." Their brief laughter faded into comfortable silence, providing a much-needed pause amidst the heavy emotional storm enveloping them. "How deep do you think it goes?" Mark finally asked softly, seriousness creeping back into his voice. Elena sighed deeply, honesty raw and heavy. "Deeper than we want to admit. Whoever's behind this, they're powerful, dangerous, and they know exactly how to hide." Mark nodded grimly, his playful mask slipping just enough to reveal genuine worry. "Well, whatever happens next, I'm right here with you." She looked up, gratitude clear in her tired eyes. "I know, Mark. I trust you." The precinct felt colder each day, relationships strained, suspicions festering into accusations whispered behind closed doors. Public pressure mounted relentlessly, demanding answers that Elena and Mark could not yet provide. Every lead unraveled painfully, each promising clue fading into disappointment. Then another letter arrived, a single sentence printed boldly. "You're searching in the wrong places. Dig deeper into those who wear badges." Alana's heart sank further. Trust within their department crumbled rapidly, leaving her questioning even though she'd considered friends. Yet Mark remained steadfast, his presence a quiet reassurance in increasingly uncertain times, driven by desperation. They returned to the cabin, compelled by the belief that something crucial had been overlooked. Inside, shadows now seemed more sinister, the darkness more oppressive. Together, they scoured every corner meticulously, driven by stubborn hope. As Elena sifted through items once again, fingers brushed against something oddly familiar yet out of place, a small, hidden compartment beneath the table. Heart racing. She pulled it open, revealing another tape recorder, carefully concealed and clearly meant to remain hidden. Wordlessly, she pressed play, breath held anxiously as another distorted recording began. But this one differed dramatically, the audio clearer, background noises unmistakably local. Footsteps crunching leaves, harsh breathing, and then a voice, urgently familiar. "Good boy, Max, quiet now," the figure whispered sharply. Elena tensed, recognizing John's voice instantly, its strained edge unmistakable. Then a second voice deeper, disguised by electronic distortion, spoke harshly. "You brought this on yourself, Duncan. You wouldn't stop asking questions." Elena's pulse raced. Painfully, realization crashing through her. She listened helplessly as the voices faded abruptly into silence, replaced by the chilling sound of footsteps retreating hastily. But it was the next fragment of recording that froze her completely. She heard Max whine, confused and distressed. Then another set of footsteps, calm, measured. A voice spoke softly, words muffled yet chillingly authoritative. "Take him deeper. Tie him up. Let them search all they want. They'll never find Duncan or what he discovered." Elena's fingers trembled uncontrollably as the recording ended, silence enveloping the room heavily. Mark stood rigid beside her, shock clear in his widened eyes. "This ... changes everything," he breathed, disbelief coloring every word. Elena nodded numbly, heart thundering, eyes wide with horror at the truth emerging piece by piece. Morgantown held secrets far darker than she'd imagined, secrets powerful enough to endanger lives, secrets that had forced John into hiding, possibly costing him everything. She glanced at Mark, voice filled with quiet urgency, each word weighted by chilling realization. John was betrayed by someone close, someone he trusted. "We can't trust anyone anymore." The wind whispered mournfully around the cabin, echoing Elena's grim certainty. They stood silently, understanding that the fight ahead would test not just their resolve, but their courage in confronting darkness that had hidden for far too long within the very heart of Morgantown. The discovery of the second recording plunged the investigation into deeper turmoil. Elena sat quietly in the precinct's briefing room, the harsh overhead lights casting sharp shadows on her weary face as the tape played repeatedly. Each replay intensified her dread, embedding the chilling voices deeper into her consciousness. Mark stood nearby, his usually bright eyes now dimmed with unease, absorbing every fragment of whispered threats and muffled warnings. Every word from the recording etched itself painfully into Elena's mind. "Take him deeper. Let them search all they want. They'll never find Duncan or what he discovered." These chilling phrases resonated ominously, confirming her darkest fears. Someone powerful, someone trusted, had orchestrated John's disappearance. Overnight, the precinct atmosphere turned suffocating. Colleagues exchanged cautious glances, mistrust seeping silently into every conversation. Elena could sense their suspicion, feel their subtle distancing, and the growing isolation unsettled her deeply. Her own police department had become an unfamiliar place, steeped in paranoia. Outside the precinct walls, Morgantown suffered under the heavy weight of uncertainty. Once a picturesque refuge, Cheat Lake now haunted the collective imagination of the townspeople, its waters shimmering deceptively under pale moonlight. Its serene beauty was cruelly ironic, masking an unspoken dread that lingered beneath the surface. At night, whispers of worry filled homes, fear replacing comfort, suspicion replacing trust. Elena watched the town she'd vowed to protect slipping steadily into quiet despair. It felt personal, as though each anguished face reflected her own helplessness and frustration. Mark tried to ease her burden with carefully timed humor and genuine reassurance, but even his jokes were losing their effectiveness, overshadowed by the dark revelations now gripping their lives. Days turned to weeks, as Elena and Mark delved deeper into the labyrinth of corruption suggested by the recordings and John's hidden journals. Their investigation revealed a complex web of illicit activities involving several local officials and respected community figures, corruption extending into realms far darker than they'd anticipated. Names previously trusted appeared repeatedly, unsettling Elena profoundly. Late one evening, as rain fell softly outside, Mark spread photographs and notes across Elena's desk. Together, they pieced fragments of evidence into a haunting picture, linking names and faces, tracing money trails and secret meetings. With each revelation, the gravity of John's warnings became clearer. He had stumbled onto something powerful enough to threaten his life and those he loved. Among the evidence was a hidden envelope. Elena discovered within John's journal a letter, written in John's precise handwriting, addressed simply to whoever finds this. Elena's pulse quickened as she read, John's voice clear and anguished in every line. If you're reading this, it means they have come for me. The things I've discovered put us all at risk, Max, myself, and anyone who digs too deeply. Trust, no. 1. Even those closest may be compromised. Protect Max, and never stop looking for the truth. The letter shook Elena to her core. John's fear was palpable, his desperation evident in every word. The threats had begun long before his disappearance. Anonymous notes, subtle warnings, incidents brushed aside as paranoia. Elena realized bitterly how isolated John must have felt. Fighting shadows alone. Further digging revealed disturbing incidents. Max and John had faced in secret break-ins at John's home, sabotaged equipment, threatening messages. John's meticulous documentation showed escalating intimidation, each event strategically designed to wear him down psychologically, to silence his inquiries permanently. Each revelation felt like a knife twisted deeper into Elena's heart. How had she missed John's pain, his silent battles fought alone? Guilt and anger entwined within her, strengthening her resolve to unravel the truth at any cost. But pursuing truth proved increasingly dangerous. Elena encountered growing resistance within the precinct, her requests for assistance denied or deliberately delayed. Colleagues who once supported her now averted their eyes, isolating her further. She began to wonder whom among her fellow officers had sold their loyalty, enticed by promises of power or protection. Mark remained steadfast, his loyalty unwavering. Together, they navigated this perilous environment, relying heavily on each other as their circle of trust narrowed dramatically. Late nights at the precinct became their refuge, sharing quiet jokes and subdued laughter to ward off exhaustion and despair. Their friendship deepened under the shadow of the investigation, becoming the emotional anchor both desperately needed. Meanwhile, Cheat Lake grew increasingly symbolic of Morgantown's anguish. Locals avoided its shores, stories spreading about strange sightings in the forest, whispered fears taking root deeply within the community psyche. The lake's beauty persisted stubbornly, reflecting brilliantly painted skies at sunset, even as it mirrored the town's escalating tension and unease. One particularly bleak evening, Elena stood silently at the water's edge, the stillness of the lake mocking her turmoil. Her thoughts drifted into painful memories of her younger brother, lost years earlier to an unresolved tragedy. The echo of that loss haunted her persistently, now amplified by John's disappearance, compounding feelings of helplessness she desperately tried to suppress. Mark's gentle voice pulled her back from these dark recollections, his humor softer now, careful, yet still comforting. You know, staring at water won't solve the case, he teased lightly. Unless you've developed psychic abilities I should know about. Elena smiled faintly, grateful for his presence. Just wondering how deep all this corruption runs, Mark. Feels like every step takes us further away from the truth. Maybe, Mark admitted quietly, but we're closer now than we've ever been. John trusted you, trusted us to finish this. We'll figure it out. His confidence bolstered her briefly, yet doubt lingered stubbornly beneath her resolve. Returning to her desk late that night, Elena faced yet another refusal of cooperation, this time from Captain Reynolds himself. His firm denial unsettled her deeply. His demeanor suggested more than mere bureaucratic obstruction. It felt personal, intentional, a warning disguised as policy. She confided these suspicions cautiously to Mark, who listened gravely, understanding the implications clearly. They both knew confronting the corruption head-on risked their careers, possibly even their lives. But abandoning their quest now was unthinkable. Their determination intensified quietly, now working independently of official support. They meticulously documented every obstruction, every refusal, building evidence of corruption extending into the highest ranks. Elena felt increasingly watched, paranoia becoming justified vigilance. Sleep eluded her most nights, the oppressive atmosphere taking its toll physically and emotionally. Then, early one frigid morning, Elena's phone rang sharply, jolting her awake instantly. She answered cautiously, her pulse quickening as an unfamiliar voice, electronically distorted, spoke slowly, deliberately. "Detective Hargrave," it began, tone calm yet deeply unsettling. "If you truly wish to understand what happened to John Duncan, come alone to the lake shore tonight, near the old boathouse. Everything will finally be revealed." The line disconnected abruptly, leaving Elena sitting numbly in darkness, heart pounding painfully. Mark noticed her shaken expression as soon as she arrived at the precinct later that morning. "What happened?" he asked immediately, concern deepening lines around his eyes. She hesitated only briefly before replying, voice tense but decisive. "We're close, Mark. Someone just promised me answers tonight at Cheat Lake." Mark's expression darkened, protective instincts evident. "Elena, it's obviously dangerous. You can't go alone." Her eyes met his firmly, resolution solidifying within. I have to. John risked everything for the truth. I owe it to him, to everyone, to finish this. Their quiet tension filled the room, unspoken fears hanging heavily between them. Elena knew this confrontation was inevitable, the culmination of every shadow she'd chased, every question she'd fought to answer. Night descended swiftly, darkness thickening over Morgantown like a veil, concealing secrets hidden too long. Elena moved cautiously toward Cheat Lake, each step echoing her heartbeat, each breath measured, controlled. The old boathouse loomed ahead, barely visible beneath the dense fog rolling silently across the lake's surface, obscuring details and heightening her apprehension. She stopped, the air around her heavy, expectant. And as she stood there, waiting, silently amid shadows and mist, Elena knew with chilling certainty that tonight would finally expose Morgantown's darkest truth, truths powerful enough to threaten lives, truths capable of destroying everything she held dear. Elena approached the old boathouse slowly, her footsteps muffled by the soft, damp earth beneath. Thick fog wrapped around her like an icy veil, cloaking everything beyond a few feet in ghostly silence. Behind her, Mark followed quietly, his usually confident steps hesitant, wary, both of them sensing the heavy weight of unanswered truths drawing near. As they reached the entrance, the air grew colder, carrying whispers of ancient wood and forgotten memories. Elena's heart quickened, and Mark glanced toward her, silently reassuring. With a trembling hand, she pushed open the creaking door, revealing shadows that stretched deep into an abandoned room. Inside, dust mingled with the scent of decay. Broken furniture stood like quiet sentinels guarding secrets long hidden. At the far corner, a shadow shifted, slowly, hesitantly rising to full height. Elena drew a sharp breath, frozen momentarily until recognition sparked vividly in her chest. "John," she whispered, disbelief trembling in her voice. He stepped forward, cautious, weakened but unmistakably alive. John Duncan, his once vibrant eyes now shadowed with weariness, his face pale yet filled with profound relief at seeing familiar faces again. Tears welled unbidden in Elena's eyes, emotions long suppressed breaking free. "Thank God you found me," John spoke softly, his voice rough, unused from weeks of isolation. Mark's tense posture relaxed visibly, relief flooding his face. "You scared the hell out of us," he managed, injecting the briefest levity into the charged silence. John's weak smile faded quickly, replaced by grim seriousness. "I didn't want this, Elena, but it was the only way. They were coming for me, and I couldn't let Max be hurt in the process." Slowly, haltingly, John began unraveling the tangled truths he'd been guarding. He spoke of discovering deep-rooted corruption in the heart of Morgantown's trusted institutions, officials using their power for profit, manipulating investigations, burying truths beneath layers of deceit and threats. His relentless probing had drawn attention, escalating threats, anonymous warnings, each darker than the last. He recounted the break-ins, the sabotaged evidence, And finally, the chilling message that convinced him his life and Max's were in imminent danger. I knew they'd stop at nothing, he admitted quietly, eyes haunted. If they couldn't silence me, they'd hurt Max or someone else close. Faking my disappearance was desperate, but necessary. Elena listened carefully, each word carving deeper wounds of guilt within her. John had borne his torment alone, convinced no one could help. She reached out gently, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You could have come to me," she whispered, voice thick with emotion. "You didn't have to fight this alone." John's eyes softened with gratitude. "I know that now. But back then, it felt like trust had died around me. Leaving Max tied up was cruel, but I knew it would spark questions, force an investigation that couldn't be ignored. I left clues praying someone trustworthy would find them." Mark stepped closer, voice steady. "We found those clues, John. You led us straight here. You're not alone anymore." John's posture relaxed slightly, burden lifting visibly from his shoulders. Yet sadness lingered deeply in his gaze, the pain of isolation etched sharply on his features. "Where's Max?" he asked finally, voice breaking softly. "Safe," Elena reassured gently. "He's waiting for you." At dawn, beneath the pale golden light breaking slowly through the mist, John walked cautiously from his hiding place toward the waiting patrol car. Max sat quietly beside it, eyes fixed intensely on the approaching figure. For a heartbeat, man and dog remained motionless, locked in silent recognition. Then Max sprang forward, bridging the distance in seconds, joy exploding from him as he collided lovingly into John's open arms. Tears streamed freely down John's face, whispered apologies lost amid the dog's excited whines. Elena and Mark watched silently, hearts aching yet lifted by witnessing their reunion, two souls bound by loyalty and unconditional love finally reunited. Morgantown awoke that morning to stunning revelations broadcast from radios and televisions. Citizens gathered in stunned silence, absorbing truths long suspected but rarely voiced. Relief mingled bitterly with disillusionment, shaking the community's faith. Trusted leaders were exposed, leaving scars across the collective heart of a town that valued trust and integrity above all. Days became weeks as investigations expanded, arrests shaking the foundation of local governance. Elena faced scrutiny and resistance, yet remained steadfast, driven by her renewed determination to uphold truth. Mark's humor returned slowly, becoming a necessary balm as the precinct navigated uncertain futures. John, cleared publicly and recognized as a whistleblower rather than a fugitive, found redemption bittersweet yet profound. Morgantown grappled openly with healing, aware that trust, once fractured, demanded patience and time to rebuild. Citizens united in quiet solidarity, determined to reclaim their community from shadows that had lingered far too long. One calm evening, Elena stood quietly at the precinct window, contemplating Morgantown's recovery beneath the gentle twilight. Mark joined her, sensing her contemplative mood. "We'll come back from this," he said softly. "People are resilient. You taught me that." She smiled faintly, appreciating his optimism. "I hope you're right, Mark." Across town, beneath softly swaying maples lining familiar streets, John walked slowly beside Max, their pace unhurried. The golden rays of sunset bathed them warmly, casting gentle, healing light on their quiet reunion. The town around them moved cautiously yet steadily toward renewal, reclaiming its identity one careful step at a time. John paused briefly, resting a hand gently on Max's head, absorbing the peaceful stillness. He felt profoundly changed, burdened, yet freed by truths finally exposed. His heart held scars, invisible yet permanent marks of courage, pain, and hard-won redemption. Morgantown, too, bore its scars openly, confronting the harsh realities brought forth by John's bravery. But beneath the quiet melancholy lingered resilience, a hopeful determination echoing softly through each street, each home, each whispered conversation. John resumed walking slowly, Max pacing steadily beside him, their bond deeper, forged anew. through shared trials and unwavering loyalty. Around them, Morgantown breathed softly, forever changed yet resilient, learning gradually to trust again, to heal beneath the patient gaze of ancient trees, guardians bearing silent witness to secrets. Finally set free,